Hello everyone, my name is Jamin Jumdar and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about injuries, the road to recovery, and the mental toll that it takes on you coming back from an injury and just the injury in general. So to begin this, I'm going to tell a little story about probably one of my worst injuries I faced in high school during my time in sports. So it was my freshman year. Everything had been going pretty well. I made the soccer team. We were about 4 or 5 games into the season, and we'd been doing pretty well. I'm pretty sure we were still undefeated to this point, and we were playing our rival team. I was the goalie, and first half starts, everything's normal, everything goes to plan. Second half starts off usual, just like the first half, but late towards the second half, one of their attackers breaks loose and breaks through the defense, and he gets a one-on-one with me, basically meaning it's just him by himself coming towards me in the goalie box. And as he gets closer and closer, I knew I had to make a decision whether I was going to stay put or run at him and kind of try to attack the ball and slide into him. And as he got closer and closer, I realized I have to go. I'm gonna have to try to make an attempt at this ball. It's a normal play. I mean, I didn't think anything bad would happen. It's a play I make all the time in practice. And so I come out, I slide, and me and the kid collide pretty hard. But the only thing I noticed is that everything kind of seemed to go black for just a split second. And then I felt just kind of like a warmness on my left leg and like an aching pain, like when you get kicked in the shin. But I thought it was just kind of like a stinger almost. And at first I didn't hear the crowd or anything, which worried me because I thought he scored, which was my biggest priority. So I looked back, noticed that the ball wasn't in the goal. So I was like, what's going on? And I looked into the crowd and everybody's kind of just silent, kind of looking towards my direction, and I was like, is everybody looking at me? And so I go to get up, and as I go to get up, I feel like almost my leg has concrete attached to it, like it's super heavy, super warm, but I was just like I said, it's probably just a stinger. So I go to plant, and I realize I can't put any weight on my leg, like I physically couldn't. And so I go to sit down, and as I'm going to sit back down, I see my trainer running out onto the field, and he's yelling like, lay down, lay down, lay down. And eventually they pick me up and they get me off the field, and I'm talking to my coach, and he says the same thing, like, oh, it's probably just a stinger, like, you'll be fine, I've had plenty of these. And so it kind of just reassured me, and I calmed down a little bit. And I'm in the trainer's office, he's looking at it, doing some tests, and he's like, where are your parents sitting? I'm gonna have to go get them. You're gonna need to go to the hospital. And I was a little confused. I was like, what? It's just a stinger. Like, nothing's wrong. Like, I should be fine. Why do I need to go to the hospital? And he wouldn't really give me an explanation, which kind of made me worry even more. So they got me into my parents' car, and we were headed to the hospital. And on the way there, I could tell that the pain throughout my leg was just increasing and increasing and increasing, almost to the point where I was having to bite my teeth or clench my teeth or like grab something to kind of make the pain bearable. And finally we get there, they put me in a wheelchair and take me back to the exam room, and the doctor basically tells me that I have a spiral fracture down my tibia, which is the bone that's in the very front of your leg, which is pretty much your shin. And what a spiral fracture means is that it cracked at the top and basically kind of made an S pattern all the way down my leg to the very bottom instead of a clean break. And if any of you are college basketball fans, you might remember Kevin Ware's terrible injury where he landed and the bone popped up out of his leg. Basically, this was the same injury, but without the bone popping out. And what the doctor explained to me is that if I would have put too much weight on my leg when I went to stand, and this is why my trainer was yelling at me to lay down, is that the bone would have just popped right out like it had no support keeping it in there. And that was awfully terrifying because I knew from his story he had to get a rod put down in his leg to make up for his shin, and then he was no longer able to play basketball and his career was derailed from there. And as only a freshman, it's kind of hard thinking that as soon as your soccer season started, it's like it's over for the rest of your life. Reluctantly, they told me they weren't sure, but that I had a good possibility of coming back, but they would have to see how it healed. So it started off with 4 weeks of a full leg cast all the way up to my hip, which I was in the wheelchair for those 4 weeks. After that, they put a smaller cast on, but I was still in a wheelchair for another 4 weeks. And then after that, another smaller cast for 2 weeks. And then after that, a boot, which I could walk in, which was a little bit better, but it's not the same as being like free roam on your own 2 feet, being able to do everything you want. But I had to do that for another 2 weeks. So in total, it was about 12 weeks of completely being in a cast and not really being able to do much of anything. So when I get the final cast off, they had me first walk to the x-ray machine, and just walking there, like I noticed I had a terrible limp, like my left leg could not support the weight that was being put on it. And as I looked at it, I realized the muscle had deteriorated so much that my leg was almost like bone, like it honestly looked pretty gross. And it concerned me, but what they told me is that I would have to do physical therapy and eventually it would come back, which I was skeptical about considering I had never done it before, but I was willing to try because I wanted to do anything I could to get back onto the field. So they gave me 6 months of physical therapy, which I started, and it started off pretty well, just light stretches, kind of just getting that range of motion back in your leg and things like that, making it normal more to walk and getting used to walking on that leg and putting weight or distributing your weight on both feet. Then eventually we moved up to me doing some weight to build the muscle back up to the leg, which wasn't too bad. And then after that, we got to a point where I could do some drills that I had done in practice. We did them a little bit more lightly just to ensure I wouldn't re-injure it, but we started to notice that through these drills, I was still kind of favoring my right leg and not wanting to put pressure on that left. So what we did is we started recording those, and I would watch them back, and I could tell that it was a mental block just in my brain not wanting, because at that point, like, I was probably 87% sure that, like, it was fine, that nothing was going to happen again. So I was pretty confident that I wouldn't re-injure it. So it was more a mental block of me just putting that leg down and getting back used to that. And so to kind of dive into this further, they were like, can you just walk up and down the hallway a few times and we're going to record it, just walk normally. And so I walked back and forth normally, just like how I had been since I started physical therapy. And they realized that I was walking with still like a limp in my left leg, which wasn't normal, because by now it should be fully healed and we should be to the point where they should be moving, my legs should be moving almost simultaneously, like they're getting back to where I was before I hurt it. And so they had me watch these videos and kind of like practice putting the majority of my weight on that left leg and still kind of, and just visualizing me walking normally again. And finally I got kind of past that block and I was walking normal, jumping off my left leg again, all the normal things. So they eventually cleared me to go back to practice and to games. And now this was a bit where the mental effect really took a toll on me, because I thought I was fine. I was ready to get back, play with my friends, get back on the team, do what I needed to do. And so I prepared all summer, working out, running, and the leg held up. It was fine, no problems. But as we got into actual practice and we started doing contact drills, myself and my coach started to notice that I was kind of almost pulling myself away from contact and trying to avoid it with that left leg, and I was just playing differently. And so I didn't really think anything of it. I thought it would still be kind of good enough for the position that I needed to play, but one day I was kind of having a real bad day, and my coach pulled me aside, and he kind of just told me, he was like, look, if you're playing this way or doing these things because you're scared of re-injuring your leg, like if that's what you're worried about, we can find you a different position. And I knew that was something that I needed to hear, definitely, but it also really hurt knowing that I had worked so hard for this position in the first place and then had lost it and then had worked so hard to try to get it back. And he was telling me, like, man, you either need to like figure this out or you're gonna have to go play somewhere else. So it really kind of started to affect my mental health and made me overthink and do different things. And so what I started to do to prevent this, or not prevent it, but kind of help me get past that, is after that I realized, like, thinking about his words, I realized he was right. Like, I was playing differently. I was playing conservative. I was trying to protect my leg, and yeah, it's your job to protect